Here we are in question 15. And we are now going to be continuing to evaluate functions. Okay, and I want you to understand that what we're doing is the same as what we just did, but now we're going to do it on a graph. Okay, but it's the same idea, which is we're going to be given a function, and we're going to have an input, and we're going to figure out what the output is. So it's the same process, right? Because when we did it with equations, we were given a function, and the function was something like this, and then we were given an input, like 7, and then we had to plug it in and find the output. Okay, so now we're actually going to go through the same process on a graph. Okay, but here's what you need to know on a graph. Okay, and I'm just going to sketch, and you should just, sketch with me. Okay, the thing you need to understand is that X is the input, and Y is the output. Okay, this is always going to be true. Especially when we talk about graphs, this is something to remember. So when I have something like this, okay, when you see something like this, a function of X, this is the input, and it's also the X value, right? Remember, this is the X axis. Okay, and then this number that it equals, you can kind of think of that as the Y, because remember, over here is the output. We learned that right in our first video about functions, that this over here inside the parentheses is the input, right? Remember, we put in our bagel. We put our bagel in, and we got out the output, the toasted bagel. So the Y is the output here. This number over here is always the output. So instead of being given an equation now, you're going to be given a visual graph. Okay, so but these equations can represent graphs, right? Like we were graphing equations last week. So when we take a look at a graph like this, let's say I ask you to evaluate f of, like, let's just say this is f of 3. Well, what you'll do is you'll say, okay, I'm going to input 3. My input is 3, and you'll find this point on the graph, right? This is your x value right here. It's the number on the x-axis. And you'll say, okay, where is that on the y-axis? So let's say, I don't know, I'm just going to make up these marks. Let's say that's a 5, right? That is your y value. So in this particular case, f of 3 would equal 5. That's what that point represents, right? That if I take this, right, because now this line, that's f of x. That line is f of x. So instead of giving you an equation, I'm giving you a graph. And I'm saying, okay, this is my function, this is my machine. And I can input an x and get an output of y. So let's say, for example, let's just do this. Let's say this is -4 here. So here, this is my x value, it's -4. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to find, where does that hit my graph? And I'm just making up numbers here, right? This is -6. So my y value here on my y-axis is my y-axis. This is a -6. And so, right, you can see that that point has an x value of -4. It has a y value of -6. So this point represents that if I have this function, this particular function, if I input a -4, my output is -6. Okay? So I can still have, it's still the same idea, which is I'm going to give you, the problem is going to look like this, evaluate this. And you're going to have to use the graph now in order to kind of find the input and the output. Okay, and so I'm actually going to show you, I'm going to switch over to the iPad to make the video, but I think it actually might be really helpful for you if you sketch the graph I'm going to use and kind of write down the problems, just because it's just so nice to be able to come back to it. So I'm just going to kind of sketch the graph I'm going to use here, and then I'm going to switch in the video over to the iPad. So just go ahead and sketch yourself a graph that's kind of as neat as you can make it. Try to be kind of evenly spaced up to 10 here. And then I like to just use half lines like this. And I'm going to go up to 7 here. Okay, and you're going to see this is the exact graph I'm going to use on the iPad. It's just going to be nice for you to kind of have it in your notes. And I'm going to start my graph right here. This graph, the graph I'm going to use, it comes down to 4, 1. Right, look, 4, 1. It's a straight line like this. And then it goes up to 8, 3. Straight line like that. And then it comes down to 10, 0 down here. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the iPad, but it'll just be sort of nice for you to have this sketch so you can kind of trace along with the things that I'm doing and sort of understand the process. Okay, so here I am with the same graph, just with our nice grid lines. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and write, so my first thing that I'm going to evaluate is f of 4, okay? Now again, as you're taking notes, I would recommend that you next to this graph actually write these down so you kind of have an example to reference, but you should just do what works for you. But here, so f of 4, and here's what I need to remember, right, is that this number inside the parentheses is always x, and this number here is always y. So basically this is telling me, okay, go to an x value of 4, and so I'm going to go to the x-axis, which is here, and I'm going to go to an x value of 4, and I'm going to go, where's my graph? Well, let's see. So at this x value of 4, my graph is, so I'm kind of like tracing with my mind up from the 4, and I find my graph is right here. It's right at this point. So then my y value is 1. So f of 4 equals 1. Okay, next question. Here, I'm going to just write down all the questions I'm going to do. F of 2. Oh, it's ugly. F of 10. I'm going to do f of 0 and f of 6. So basically I'm being given all these x values and I'm going to find the y value, right? So here I'm going to go to f of 2. So again, that's my x value, right? You can even kind of write it for yourself. Okay, I'm looking for my y. So my x value is 2. I'm right over here. I'm kind of tracing up to my y value. My y value is 4, right? And I kind of traced over. So I kind of started at 2. I said, okay, my x value is 2. I traced up to this point. I paused there and I said, okay, let me go find my y value, and it's 4. So f of 2 is 4. F of 10. So now I'm looking for, on my x-axis, I'm looking for 10. I found it. Where's my graph? Oh, hey, it's right here. What's that y value? Huh. That y value is 0. F of 10 is 0. What about f of 0? Okay, well, so that's, remember, this is my x value. Okay, this is my x value, so I'm going to go to my x-axis. I'm going to go to 0. Okay, where's my graph? Oh, there it is, right here. On 7. My y value here is 7. Okay, now I'm going to say, okay, my f of 6, so that means this is my x value is 6. So I'm going to go to my x-axis. I'm going to go to 6. I'm going to go up. Where's the graph? It's right here. And my y value is 2. Okay, and then I'm going to say f of 7. I'm going to go, okay, that's my x value. So here's 7. I'm going to go up to my graph. Huh, that's kind of tricky. It's right in between, but you know what? Where is it? It's in between 2 and 3. What is that number? That's 2.5. Okay, so this is what you're going to be doing. And in fact, this question that I just did, this example in this video, this is actually going to be question 16. Okay?